They chained us for centuries, stripped our land and crushed our families. Now in 2025, after all that blood and sacrifice, they want to lock up a black man for defending his people, while the ones who designed apartheid never saw a single prison cell. Tell me, is that freedom? Or is that the same system with a new name and fancier chains? We need to talk about Julius Malema. And let's be clear, this is bigger than Malema himself. This is about whether black South Africans are truly free, or if we're still trapped under a system that swaps out faces but never changes the rules. On October 1st, 2025, Julius Malema was found guilty of firearms violations from way back in 2018. Yes, you heard me, 7 years ago.
Fighters, we should not be discouraged. We should continue to fight, because this fight will not end today. We are going to the appeal and we will go to the Supreme Court. We'll end up at the Constitutional Court. We are not fighting the case. We are fighting racism, pure racism that we have been subjected to for 7 years. Mediocrity of the highest order. A magistrate who can't read her own notes. She writes down and can't read what she has written down. But if it was an African female reading the same way she was reading, it will be a huge criticism out there. But because it's white and we accept white mediocrity, there is no outcry and criticism out there. We want to take this opportunity to thank our legal team. They fought a good fight. They stood with us, and as we move forward, we are going to reinforce that legal team. We'll bring Advocate Mugai Toby as we go into the appeal and strengthen our case, because it is now beyond all of us. We need to strengthen our team and confront the system, and you need lawyers who are not scared of the system.
For 7 years, this case dragged on. 7 years of hearings, paperwork and delays. 7 years of watching the state throw resources into silencing one of the loudest voices for black economic freedom. And suddenly, after Donald Trump sits down with Cyril Ramaphosa in May this year and says, "Why won't you arrest that man?" Suddenly, this dusty old case comes alive again, and Malema faces 15 years in prison. 15 years for a 2018 rally where he fired a gun into the air at a political celebration. Nobody hurt, nobody killed. But today, the state says that deserves a sentence harsher than what many apartheid criminals ever got. Don't tell me that's coincidence. Don't insult our intelligence. That's not law. That's politics. That's pressure. That's a system being manipulated to break one man and send a message to millions. The West loves to paint Malema as a dangerous radical. They show old clips, they twist liberation songs, they push the narrative that he's calling for violence. But let's set the record straight. South Africa's own constitutional court has already ruled that those songs are part of our liberation heritage. They are chants of resistance, not instructions for violence. The courts in this country, not America, not Europe, have made that clear. But Trump, he doesn't care. He sat in the White House dimming the lights and showing Ramaphosa videos, demanding to know why Malema was still free. That's not diplomacy, that's foreign interference. Let's not forget what actually happened in Madanse, Eastern Cape in 2018. Malema fires shots into the air with a weapon his bodyguard Adrian Snyman gave him. Who gets punished? Malema. Who gets acquitted? Snyman. Let that sink in. The supplier of the weapon walks free, but the black leader with the loudest mouth against white capital faces 15 years. If that's not selective justice, then I don't know what is. This whole trial sat in the background for years. Quiet, moving slowly, no urgency. And then Trump decides to put his finger on the scale, embarrassing Ramaphosa, calling Malema an extremist, demanding action. And suddenly, the system finds its backbone. After 7 years, they rush to convict. That's not just law, that's a message. And here's the truth. 1994 didn't free us, It just switched chains. Back then, the chains were obvious. No vote, no land, no power. Now the chains are invisible. Endless debt, courts stacked against us, laws written to keep the wealthy wealthy and the poor begging for scraps. And when someone like Malema demands those chains be broken, suddenly the courts remember how to move fast. Now, let's dig into the mechanics of this case, because Western media will never give you the full breakdown. They want you to see Julius Malema as reckless, dangerous, and out of control. But when you look closer, you see how carefully this trial was set up to send a message. In 2018, at the EFF's 5th birthday celebration in Madansan, Eastern Cape, Malema takes a rifle, fires shots into the air. It's a political rally, not a battlefield. His bodyguard, Adrian Snyman, provides the weapon. Snyman is charged too, but look at what happens. Snyman walks free. Malema gets hammered with 5 counts: unlawful possession of a firearm, unlawful possession of ammunition, discharging a firearm in a built-up area, and reckless endangerment. 2 people, same situation, but only one pays the price. And it just so happens to be the black political leader who spends every day calling for land redistribution, nationalization of mines, and economic power for the black majority. The man who actually supplied the gun gets a handshake and goes home. Tell me that's not bias. For years, this case sat in the shadows. Sure, it crept through the courts, but there was no urgency. It wasn't splashed across headlines. Nobody in Washington or London cared. Until May 2025. Until Donald Trump decided to humiliate Ramaphosa at the White House. Let me paint that picture again. Trump dims the lights, plays clips of Malema singing liberation songs and says, "Why haven't you arrested this man? Why is he still walking free?" He frames Malema as the boogeyman, the ultimate threat. He doesn't care that South Africa's constitutional court has already ruled that those songs are part of our history, not cause for violence. He doesn't care that experts in South Africa have thoroughly debunked the white genocide narrative. Trump isn't here for facts. He's here to protect white capital, white land ownership, white control. And what happens just months later? Suddenly, this 7-year-old case is rushed to a conclusion. Suddenly, Malema is guilty. Suddenly, he's facing 15 years. And let's not be naive. This isn't just about Trump. AfroForum has been chasing Malema for years. They've dragged him to court again and again over the Kill the Boer song. And each time, they lose. Each time, courts rule that it's heritage, not hate speech. Each time, they're told to sit down. But do they stop? They keep filing. They keep harassing. They keep pushing. Because their strategy isn't justice, it's exhaustion. They want to drain Malema, distract him, bog him down in courtrooms instead of rallies. They want to bleed his resources dry. And AfroForum doesn't act alone. They've got powerful friends. They've got conservative media worldwide ready to spread propaganda about South Africa being unsafe for white people. They've got billionaires like Elon Musk amplifying lies about genocide that South African courts themselves have rejected. They've got the ear of Western politicians who love to use white victimhood stories as cover for maintaining economic control over African nations. So what are we really seeing with Malema's guilty verdict? We're seeing a convergence. Local white interest groups working hand in hand with international white power to silence a black leader who refuses to stay quiet. We're seeing how easily South Africa's sovereignty can be bent when foreign powers apply pressure. And we're seeing a government, our own ANC government, too timid to push back. This isn't just law enforcement. This is political warfare disguised in courtrooms and verdicts. It's the same system that once jailed Mandela and Biko. Now it tries to cage Malema. Different decade, same playbook. Now, let's talk about the ANC, because while it's easy to point at Trump, AfroForum, and the courts, the truth is this. The ANC let it happen. They opened the door. They handed over the keys. The ANC was supposed to be the party of liberation, the party of Mandela, Tambo, Sisulu, the ones who stood for us when apartheid crushed our backs. But today, They are more worried about keeping white capital comfortable than defending the very people who put them in power. Look at how Ramaphosa handled Trump in Washington. Trump dimmed the lights, ran his little show, and attacked Malema right there in the Oval Office. Did Ramaphosa defend Malema's constitutional rights? Did he defend South Africa's sovereignty? Did he say, "Hold up, America doesn't get to dictate our justice system"? He distanced himself. He looked down. He let Trump run the room. That wasn't leadership. That was weakness. And that weakness filters down. When Trump applies pressure, our leaders fold. When AfriForum files lawsuits, our leaders shrug. When Western powers push for stability, our leaders interpret that as, "Don't rock the boat, don't touch the mines, don't talk about land." The ANC has become the gatekeeper of white comfort, not the champion of black liberation. So what does that mean for us, the majority? It means that even though we are 80% of this country, we live like a minority. We live like guests in our own land. We live like we're waiting for permission slips to be free. Let's be honest. 1994 gave us the vote, but not the wealth. It gave us black faces in government, but not black control of the economy. It gave us parades, ceremonies, and speeches, but the land, the mines, the money, still locked in the hands of the few, still dominated by the descendants of colonizers. That's why this Malema case cuts so deep, because it shows how fragile our freedom really is. If a foreign leader can whisper in the ear of our president and suddenly one of the loudest voices for economic freedom is facing 15 years in jail, then what kind of sovereignty do we have? What kind of independence is that? And here's the painful truth. The ANC is complicit. They are so desperate to look respectable to Western eyes that they will sell out their own people. They are so desperate to keep foreign investors smiling that they will muzzle anyone who talks too loudly about redistribution. They are so desperate to sit at the global table that they will let our people eat crumbs at home. That's why so many black South Africans feel betrayed. We sacrificed, we fought, we voted. And what did we get? Leaders who bow to Washington instead of standing tall for Soweto. Leaders who protect the rand more than they protect the poor. Leaders who talk transformation but practice appeasement. This is why Malema's conviction is not just about him. It's about the question every black South African has to ask. Are we free, or are we still being managed? Are we sovereign, or are we still colonial subjects in disguise? Do we own this country, or do we just rent it from the people who stole it? The ANC will tell you we're free. They'll point to the Constitution, they'll point to the flag, they'll point to Parliament. But real freedom isn't symbols. Real freedom is land. Real freedom is wealth. Real freedom is sovereignty. And right now, we don't have it. Let me remind you what our ancestors endured. Mama Winnie Mandela was tortured, imprisoned, and vilified because she refused to bow to oppression. Chris Hani was gunned down because he believed real freedom meant economic justice, not just political seats. Steve Biko was beaten to death because he dared to teach black people to love themselves. Solomon Mahlangu faced the hangman's noose and shouted, "My blood will nourish the tree of freedom," before he died. Now ask yourself, what would they say if they saw 2025? What would they say if they saw a so-called free South Africa, where a foreign president whispers, and suddenly our leaders put one of our loudest fighters on trial? What would they say if they saw a black majority still begging for scraps from the table of white capital 3 decades after apartheid? Mama Winnie would call it what it is: betrayal. Chris Hani would call it cowardice. Steve Biko would call it mental slavery. And Solomon Mahlangu, he'd remind us that the revolution was never meant to be comfortable. This guilty verdict against Malema is not about firearms. It is about power. It is about a message: stay in your place. And that message is being sent not just to Malema, but to every single black South African who dares to raise their voice about land, wealth, and justice. So let's get real. Whether you love Malema, hate him, or sit somewhere in between, this isn't about one man. This is about sovereignty. This is about whether the black majority can govern its own destiny, or whether we're still being managed by laws, courts, and economic systems designed by colonizers. Who wrote the Firearms Control Act that Malema supposedly violated? Who designed the courts? Who created the very system that still judges us today? The same people who once declared our liberation songs hate speech. The same people who built wealth off our dispossession. The same people whose grandchildren still live in luxury while our people still live in shacks. And now, those same laws, those same courts are being used to make an example of a black leader who dares to say what so many of us feel in our bones, that political power without economic power is fake freedom, that voting rights without land rights is empty symbolism, that a black face in high office means nothing if the white elite still hold the keys to the vault. This conviction is a test of us as a people. Will we shrug and say, that's Malema's problem? Or will we recognize that if they can bend the system to break him, they can bend it to break any of us? It's also a test of the ANC. Will they continue choosing foreign approval over local liberation? Will they keep appeasing Washington and London while ignoring Soweto and Umlazi? Will they keep playing coalition games with white interest parties while the majority starves? Or will they finally remember who put them in power in the first place? Let's be clear. Malema didn't kill anyone. He didn't design apartheid. He didn't order massacres like Sharpeville. But he's facing more time than most apartheid leaders ever did. That's not justice. That's selective punishment. That's a reminder that the system is still rigged. So here's the question, South Africa. Are we really free? Or are we still living under invisible chains? Are we sovereign? Or are we still client subjects to foreign power? Are we truly liberated? Or are we just managed, pacified, and distracted while others reap the wealth of this land? Our ancestors didn't die for this. They didn't bleed so that Western powers could still dictate our politics. They didn't sacrifice so that white lobbies could still decide who is acceptable and who is not. They fought so that we could be free. Fully free, and freedom means more than flags and parades. Freedom means land in the hands of the people. Freedom means wealth in the hands of the majority. Freedom means never again asking colonizers for permission to exist on soil that carries our ancestors' bones. So I'll say this plain, I stand with Julius Malema. Not because I worship the man, not because I agree with every tactic, but because I refuse to let colonizers decide which black voices are acceptable. I refuse to let white capital dictate who can lead. I refuse to let Western powers write our story for us. The revolution didn't end in 1994. It shifted gears, and this conviction, it's a wake-up call. Either we rise, or we accept managed freedom forever. And to anyone who thinks black South Africans should stay quiet, stay grateful, stay in our place, I've got news for you. We are not going back to silence. We are not bowing to intimidation. We are not asking permission to be free. Amandla.